So recently I posted a poll on Instagram to ask you guys what you think I should do in my next video. And it turns out that 75% of y'all wanted to see me make a beat using only sounds from my kids' toys. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in today's video. So I've actually gone through all the kids' toy boxes, and it turns out that my two elder kids don't actually have many toys that make noises. But luckily I also have a baby, and every single toy that this girl owns makes a noise. So these are the toys that I've selected to make a beat from. The first toy I found is this elephant, and I think I'm going to use this to make some sort of melody loop. Next I found these number counting blocks, and I'm going to use these to make some sort of snares or percussions. I'll take a few pieces from this phone. It makes some tonal noises, and it also does counting, so I can use the numbers for some sort of drop. And lastly, I got this rainmaker. I'm going to use this for some sort of shaker, and then I'm also going to bang it to make a kick. So all I need to do now is record some of these sounds into my DAW, and then I can start picking them apart, and hopefully we'll get a good beat out of them.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now I've got these sounds recorded into my DAW. I just need to start going through them and selecting pieces that I can use to make a beat. So I'm going to really challenge myself here, and I'm going to try and make a drill beat from these sounds. Now I was going to use the sample that I took from this elephant to try and make a melody loop, but if you take a quick listen to it, you're going to hear that it's just way too jolly. So I think I'm going to save this layer for later, and I'll probably just take out a drum fill or something from it. To make the first part of my melody, I think I'm going to take some of these tonal notes that I recorded from the phone. I'm going to take this note here that's already tuned to C, so that's handy. Then I'm just going to hit Ctrl and J to consolidate it, and then drag it down to an empty MIDI track to add it to a simpler. And now I've got that single MIDI note mapped out to the keys on my keyboard. Now I'm actually going to be taking a shortcut here, because I'm going to be choosing one of the MIDI files from my brand new submerged MIDI kit. If you want to check the kit out, then I'm going to leave some links for it in the description. So yeah, I'm just going to flick through these MIDI files and try to find a nice dark one. Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to this first one because that one sounds the darkest. Then I'm just going to transpose the whole thing down by 1 octave. Now this sounds really thin, so I'm just going to add some effects to help thicken it out a little bit. If you're a regular on the channel, then you're going to know that I love using Guitar Rig, and I use this on all sorts of sounds, not just guitars. And I'm using a vocal space preset. I'm just going to use my EQ8 to cut out some of the low end. Then I'm also going to add a high shelf to just take out some of the high end too. Next up I got RC20 with a vinyl 3 preset, and as always I'm just going to turn this noise module off, as well as take some of the highs and the lows out of the distortion. Now I think that sounds good, so I can move on to the next sound.
Bye-bye.
So next up I found this sound from the phone. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to chop out the piece that I want to use, press Ctrl and J. Then I'm going to drag this into an empty MIDI track to add it to a simpler. Now know that this sound is pitched to E, so I've just added a tuner, and I'm going to use the transpose controls inside my simpler until that tuner's hitting C. This sound was a bit short and stabby, so I added some Valhalla Vintage Verb just to put a tail on it. I also copied the exact same preset from Guitar Rig and then just added a glue compressor to squash it a bit. Now there's some frequencies in the high end that sound a bit harsh, so I'm just going to use Soothe 2 and find a preset that makes it sound a bit better. Now even after adding Soothe 2, I noticed that some of the frequencies still sound a bit resonant, so I'm just going to use this Pro Q to try and find the problem frequencies and cut them out. So now I've got the sounds from the elephant and the sound from the phone layered together, and they sound like this. So yeah man, I think I'm going to leave that melody there for now and start adding some drums. First up I want to make a hi-hat to set the pace for the rest of the beat, and I think I'm going to take that from this Rainmaker here. So I'm going to zoom right in and just choose one of these little transients here and try and make a hi-hat from it. I think I'm going to take this one here. So again I'm going to press Ctrl and J to consolidate it, then I'm going to drag it down to an empty MIDI track, and that's going to add it to a simpler. And yeah man, that already sounds like a hi-hat, but I'm just going to add a high shelf just to bring out some of them higher frequencies. Now to add a bit of brightness, I'm just going to use fresh air. Now I like to go for the high air first, and then I'll bring in some of the mid air afterwards. Then I'm going to use this trim knob to just bring down the overall volume of it. And yeah man, there's our hi-hat. Then I'm just going to add a hybrid reverb, and I'm turning the dry wet all the way down so it's very subtle. Next up I need to find a snare, and for that I'm going to use the counting blocks. Now for my snare I'm actually going to be using an instrument rack instead of a simpler, and the reason being is you can come into this chain section and add multiple sounds. So again I've consolidated my sound, and from here I can come onto my instrument rack and just drag this into the chain section. Now I want to find another sound to layer this with so the snare sounds a bit more thick. I think I'm going to use this one here. So I can just take this and drag it into the chain section as well, and now these two sounds are going to be layered together. Next I've just added Decap's knock plugin, and I'm using the breakbeat hard, and I've just adjusted some of these parameters a little bit. Then to add a bit of crunch to it, I'm just going to use Ableton's drum bus, and I'm going to turn up this crunch setting as well as the drive setting. And now I'm just going to record in my snare pattern. I'm going to go back into these counting blocks and try and find something I can use for a perk. Next I think I want to add a shaker, so I'm back inside this Rainmaker sample, and I'm going to find a piece to use for the shaker. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to use this as an open hi-hat, I think. This time instead of using a MIDI track, I'm just going to take this down and drag it onto an audio track. And yeah, now I'm just going to make a pattern with this. Now this is the part where I think things are going to get hard, because I've got to try and find a way to make an 808 out of these samples. I think I'm going to come back into the notes from the phone. I'm going to choose a different sample this time so it's not exactly the same. Now I'm just going to come to the end of this clip, hold down shift, and this is going to allow me to stretch the clip back on itself. Now I'm going to reconsolidate this and drag this down to my simpler. Now to add some distortion, I'm going to use RC20 and turn off everything except for the distortion. Then I want to come in and just make sure I'm not distorting too much of the low or the high end. Now from here I'm just going to write out my 808 pattern. That 808 sounded a bit muddy, so I'm just going to take this melody and transpose it up by 2 semitones, and that will allow me then to transpose my 808 up by 2 as well. And I recorded some samples of me hitting the end of the Rainmaker, so I think I'm going to use one of those. Now I'm just going to go into the piano roll and lay down my kick pattern. So yeah, I've added all the elements that I want to add, but as you can probably hear, it sounds like a bit of a hot mess at the moment. So I'm going to go through now, just level everything out, add some extra effects, and then I'll be back to show you the full beat. So yeah, that is going to bring us to the end of today's video. If you want to see me take on some more of these crazy challenges, then leave me some suggestions in the comments. And remember, if you want to have a say in these polls, then you need to be following my Instagram. If you like the sound of the MIDI file that was in today's video, then that and loads more can be found in the submerged MIDI kit. I'll also leave some links to that in the description. If you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to smash the like button before you leave. And if you're new to the channel, then turn that subscribe button grey. Big shout out to anybody that's still here at the end of the video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.